So there was a new update to the Nintendo Switch. It came out just a couple of days ago, version 20.0.0. This was the update. It was leading into the Switch 2 release, added new features that are going to be Switch 2 compatible. The key one being Virtual Game Card. This is the one that is garnering the most attention, and it is the one that I was most excited about leading up to this update. I've been very excited about this since I heard about it, but it has drummed up some controversy. So in this video, we're going to talk about the old way that digital games used to be handled, the new way, how they're handled now, and we will talk about the controversy. I'm going to talk about Virtual Game Card as in depth as I can, because I think that there's still a lot of confusion around how it actually works, which is weird because other than the amount of words it takes to describe how it works, it's very simple. So the old way that digital games were handled on the Switch goes like this. If you have more than one Nintendo Switch, then you have a primary console and you have a secondary console. The primary console is pretty self-explanatory what it is, same with the secondary. But basically on the primary console you have unlimited access to all the licenses of all the digital games you purchase, meaning that they can be played at any time, anywhere, with or without internet access by any profile on the Switch. Your secondary console is different. It has limited access to those digital copies. So you can download that game onto your secondary Switch and you can play it on your secondary Switch, but you would have to be connected to the internet to play it, and you could only play it on your account on that secondary Switch. So a lot of people, what they would end up doing is if they had two personally, then the one that they used at home that they weren't taking when they traveled, they would set that one as their secondary, even though it's the one they use the most, because it's always connected to the internet. And then if they had a Switch Lite or just a different one that they brought out when they traveled, that would be their primary, so they wouldn't have to be connected to the internet. There's a couple issues that I personally had with this old way. The main one being that it makes it so that my wife can't play the games I bought digitally. She really wanted to play Pokemon when I got that game, or maybe when we got together. I don't remember. I had it. And I loaded up my profile on her Switch, downloaded the game, and it wouldn't let her play it because it's limited access, which I wasn't fully aware of at the time, but now I know that that's why. So what that means is that she could only play the game on her account if she played on my Switch, and she could only play the game on her Switch if she played on my account. So she ended up just not playing it because she wanted to play on her device and on her account, because that's how sane people act. In my opinion, the old way sucked. And when they announced that they were going to do virtual game cards, I actually was really excited. The idea of the virtual game card is to make your digital games as dynamic as a physical game. So how does it work? Well, you still have two Switches. Or, in my case, I have one and my wife has one. You take your two and you bind them together. You link them directly. Not physically, but directly. And then those are your two Switches. This can only be done with two, but it works. And why would you need more than two? But either way, after these two Switches are linked, you can freely move digital games back and forth between them from any account that owns it, right? So I can move my digital games to her Switch because now I have my account on her Switch and I linked them, and vice versa. Then when they are loaded onto whatever Switch they're on, they're treated like it's a physical game card. Any account can play them as if it's the primary Switch. You don't need internet access to play them, and any account on the Switch can play them. The only time you need internet access, the only time when that really matters is when you're loading and unloading a game. So if you were to travel, like let's say you have one that you use at home and you have one that you take when you travel, when you're packing or whatever, you just go in and you load all the games you're going to want to play onto the one you're going to take with you, and then you're good to go. No hassle, no fuss. It is really, really cool. It's a feature I love, and because of this feature now, my wife is able to play Pokemon on her Switch on her account. And not just Pokemon, but any of my games that I bought digitally. In my opinion, it's a huge improvement, and I do think that they hit the nail on the head with making digital games more like physical games. You've got the versatility of switching between the consoles. It is limited to 2, but I understand the reason for that limitation, because if you could link as many as you wanted, then it just, you know, you could there's a way you could profit off of that, and Nintendo wouldn't like that. And really, I think the amount of people that have 2 Switches is really low, and the parents might each have one and the kids might have one to share or something like that. And then you would want them to all be bound. But more than likely, I would say people in that situation only have 2, one for the kids and one for the adults, or maybe they only have one and it's a shared system. Either way, I do see where there would be a benefit from having the ability to bind more than 2, but it's not necessary. And with the game lending, it's not even really that big of a deal. Game lending is another feature of the virtual game card. Basically, you add people to your Nintendo family group. After they're added in the Nintendo family group, you can lend them any of your virtual game cards, and they have access to that game for 2 weeks before it automatically returns to your Switch. They don't lose any of their save data, and you can lend it out as many times as you want to. You can only lend one game to one person at a time, but they're able to play it freely, and they won't lose their save data when it inevitably returns to them. As the lender, you can also take it back whenever you want if you feel like it. They do have to be in your family group, and your family group is limited to 8, but I feel like that is a plenty fine number. I don't know many people who would be lending out games to more than 8 people, personally. I think that's a fine number. A lot of people are unhappy about the biggest drawback of the game lending, which is that when you are lending the game, you have to be in the same room with that family group member. Your Switches have to connect locally. People aren't happy about that, and I understand that. And with the 2 that are bound, like what I was talking about before, the 2 Switches that are bound together, they don't have to be in the same room. They only need to be in the same room to link them. After that, you can freely move them back and forth. But for game lending, you do have to be in the same room every time. But like I said, they're trying to emulate the versatility of a physical game. And you can't share a physical game with somebody unless you're in the same room with them. Now, I know that a lot of people buy digital games, especially with things like Game Share and stuff like that. They do buy those games with lending them to people that they never see in person in mind. I think the amount of people who do that is probably pretty low, but I know it does happen, and so it is a bummer for those people. But I mean, like, honestly, there comes a point where in my mind, I'm just like, just fucking have the other person buy the game. They can buy it too. I mean, we bought 2 copies of Minecraft in my house for the Switch, 2 Switch versions of Minecraft. I mean, I bought Minecraft a bunch of times, but we bought 2 Switch versions of it so that we could play together, because we didn't know about the loophole, and also we would have never done the loophole. But we'll get into that. The 2 Switches that you bind together can be found online on the Nintendo website in your account. So when you replace your Switch, there will be a way to unbind them, rebind your new Switch, if that doesn't happen automatically when you transfer your data, because it might. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see when I'm able to get a Switch 2. We'll have to see how that works and how the experience is of moving from my Switch that is currently linked to my wife's to a Switch 2, whether we'll have to relink it or whether it will happen automatically. If we'll even need to go to the website, we'll have to see. But you can manage people in your family group and the Switches that you have linked together in the online profile account settings. So I've talked up the virtual game card. I am really happy with it. We've been using it for a couple of days now, and Haley's been playing some Pokemon. And it's not like a super exciting feature by any means as far as like using it goes. The idea is really exciting, and it is really exciting that we have this ability now, but it's not enthralling to move games back and forth. You know what I mean? If you're not already familiar with the controversy, you might be asking yourself what the controversy is. Because in my opinion, this all sounds like good stuff. Nothing about virtual game cards seems bad to me. So it actually took a while before I figured out what the issue was. I had to do some research. I watched a video, and the guy was going on and on about how horrible virtual game card was. It took away a feature, and I was trying to figure out what the hell he meant by that, because he kept saying that now he can't play with like his nephew or some bullshit because they took this feature away. And I was like confused, because the whole thing about the primary and secondary Switch was that you couldn't play the same game at the same time on both Switches. It was one copy. And so that didn't make any sense to me. He's talking about playing online with his nephew and only needing to buy the game once and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And I did some digging, and I figured out what I assume has to be what he's talking about, because he never explained the loophole, and all these people who are mad have never explained the loophole. But basically, here is how the loophole works. On the old way, you have your primary Switch and your secondary Switch. So let's say you only have one, but you go to your buddy's house, you log into your account on their Switch so that they have access to your games. They can only play on your account. You go back home, they boot up the game that you downloaded, that you bought, that you own. They boot it up on their Switch on your account. And then you boot up the same game on your Switch on an account that's not yours. And then you can play online together with just one copy of the game. That's the loophole. And I didn't know that existed. A lot of people didn't know that existed. But with the amount of anger on the internet right now, you'd think that I'm the only person who didn't know it existed. And everybody used this feature all the time. Like I said before, we bought 2 copies of Minecraft because we wanted to play together online. Why would I want to play a game on an account that isn't mine? And why would I want somebody else to play on my account? It doesn't make sense to me personally. But, you know, I guess there are some people who did that. But in my opinion, in a lot of these scenarios, the person you're playing with should probably just buy the game. Like, if you do this enough that you're mad that they took it away, why are you only using one copy? Why would you rather play on somebody else's account than just tell your buddy to buy the fucking game? Or even pitch in money so you can keep playing together. It doesn't make sense to me. The video that I was watching, that I referenced earlier, where he can't play with his nephew anymore, it's because his nephew's parents won't buy him the fucking game? Or because his nephew won't buy the game? Or because he won't buy his nephew the game? They play online enough that, like, this is a thing they do, but oh my god, a second copy of the game we play all the time for an entirely different household would just be, that's madness. That's unthinkable. You're telling me that two totally separate people have to each buy the game? That's fucked up. Nah, one person should buy the game, and then everybody can play it. Everybody in the world. With all this hubbub, I saw a lot of people in the comments of a lot of these videos I was watching saying some things I don't totally understand. One of them that I saw a few times was that their Switch updated and now they can't play any of their games anymore. And that's one that initially baffled me. How? How can you not play any of your games anymore? Do you mean that you never bought a game for your Switch and that you're using somebody else's account who bought all these games? Do you mean that your Switch was set as the secondary and not as the primary for your account? And all you got to do is load the games, but you can't figure out how? How does this work? I don't understand how you can't play your games now. But it turns out there was some issues with the update. There were a few Switches that ended up just boot looping, and there were some glitches. That's all to be expected with a big version update. Patches have been released, and to my knowledge, all issues have been resolved. But the people in the comments didn't make it seem like they couldn't play their games anymore because of the update, period, because they got some, like bad version or whatever. They were making it seem like they couldn't play their games anymore because of the virtual game card, which is dumb as shit, and I have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Unless they actually have never bought any of the games anymore. There were other baffling comments online, people saying, I'm so glad my Switch is in airplane mode. I'm never going to take it out of airplane mode because I don't want this update. And that baffles me because if you're not playing online, this update will have no effect on you at all. If you're not going to connect to the internet to not get the update, it defeats the purpose of not getting the update, because the whole point of not getting the update is so that you can play on somebody else's account to play online with somebody who's playing on your account. So that doesn't make any sense to me. That's one that I still don't understand. They really must just not know actually what this update is, and they see all this rage and this anger, and they took a feature away, and they assumed that if they don't update their Switch, then they're avoiding the reckless removal of this feature that they love. But if they're on airplane mode, they don't use the feature, and they're not going to. And if they won't be affected by the update at all. The UI will look a little bit different, and it'll show that there's a game inserted on their digital games. That's it. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But whatever. Another comment that I saw a lot was something along the lines of, if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't theft. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, actually, what the hell are you saying? This is not limiting consumers. This isn't saying that you don't own the game if you buy it. In my opinion, this is more user-friendly, and this is more consumer-first, and this is more of you owning your game, because now I can take that game and somebody else who lives with me can play it whenever they want to. Unlike before, when they just couldn't play it unless they were playing on my Switch or on my account. So that one really is the most baffling to me. I feel like when people hear phrases like virtual game card, before they even know what it means, they just kind of assume it means you don't own your games. But like, it's a digital game. People say that shit about them buying a physical game and the game not all being on the cartridge. There's no fucking cartridge. Now there's a digital cartridge, a virtual game card. But like, it's not limiting the licensing by any means. It might be restricting, not even restricting. It might be closing a loophole that allowed the same game to be played at the same time by two different people, but you can't play the same game at the same time by two different people with a physical game. You can't. Unless you're playing split screen on the same system. But two different systems cannot load the same copy of a game. You've got to fucking buy it twice if it's physical. Am I crazy? I feel crazy. I feel like I'm going crazy because of all this bullshit. But I also feel like the people who are mad don't actually know why they're mad. The people who are mad because they actually legitimately lost the ability to use that feature aren't saying what the feature is or what the loophole was. They're just saying there was a way where I only had to buy it once and I could play it with my buddy online, but now it's gone. And they're not elaborating on what that way was before. And I've seen lots of confused comments going, I never knew there was a way to do it with the same copy, but it's messed up that they took that away. And the people who are commenting things like that, I think would be saying something different if they actually knew what the loophole was. I think they'd be saying something along the lines of, oh, that's what the loophole is? Because why the hell would you want to play on a different account that's not yours? Tell me. So it just doesn't make sense that the people are mad. I think they don't know why they're mad. In my opinion, the old loophole is sort of like it was like a secret little thing for like divorced dads, right? It's the same thing that the camera on the Switch 2 is for. It's for a specific type of person where they just got through a messy divorce and their wife took all of their things and they have no money, but they have a Switch and their kid has a Switch and they want to see them more than once every other weekend. So they can buy the game once. They don't have to buy it twice because they're broke. They don't want to buy it twice. They can buy it once and they can play online with their kid who they don't get to see enough, and they can have a good time. Neither of them care what account is being used. Neither of them care about any of that because it's like a divorced dad feature. He just wants to hang out with his kid. You know, it's what the camera's for the Switch 2. And it does suck for the divorced dads. It does suck. It's like, all right, you had this feature you could use to play with your kid and now you don't. That sucks. But like, I don't even know how mad that crowd is about it, because also they could just buy a second copy of the game, and I would assume that most of the people in that situation did actually buy 2 copies of the game and they didn't know about the loophole. And the actual people who are using the loophole are like, it's almost like I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but it's almost like an advanced form of piracy where they're like, fuck, all right, you're my buddy, I'm your buddy. How about this? How about we only use each other's accounts? Or how about I set up your Switch to be like my account's primary, right? And then they've got this deal going with their buddy where they both buy these games and then they both have access to them, but only when they're connected to the internet, and then their Switches are unusable if they're not connected to the internet, and then this just sort of gets around them having to buy their games because, like, if their buddy buys it, they'll just get it for free, which is fine. It's how like game share on Xbox and stuff works, and that's all cool. Those are cool features when they're there, but like, this isn't that. This is not game share like on Xbox. It really is not. And yeah, I understand that Nintendo support has posted things talking about how this is an option. I'm not saying that this was unintentional on Nintendo's end, just that it's like for a very specific group, and that group is divorced dads and people who like just won't pirate, but just barely won't pirate. You know what I mean? Anyway, in my opinion, Virtual Game Card is awesome, and everybody who is mad about it is either just outliers or they actually don't know why they're mad and they're just bandwagoning. It's really cool to hate Nintendo now, and if you don't hate Nintendo, you're like a little bitch boy, basically. A little beta cuck. So that's why everybody's mad, is because, I don't know. Did Moist Critical say to be mad about this one? I bet he did. That's it. Peace.